Guys, with the threat of another shutdown looming over us, is it time to work together and figure out how to continue to build an Airbnb business? Or is it time to press the pause button, sit back, and see what happens? We're going to talk about that right now here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Hey, welcome in, everyone. You're listening to me, Kyle Stanley, here on the Fearless Investor Podcast, where I'm bringing you everything investing. And really, more specifically, recently, we've been talking a lot about Airbnb. I'm finding most of you tune into my information and my podcast, YouTube channel because of Airbnb. And so I want to give you the most of what you want. But at the same time, I want to let you know, too, what's going on in my world and how I'm not just using Airbnb and short-term rentals as my investing vehicle, but I'm doing other things as well. But before we jump into that, I do want to make sure that you guys have already downloaded my Airbnb profit calculator. Just go to fearlesskyle.com. Download the calculator. It's absolutely free. It's right there on the homepage, and you can figure out if you've got an Airbnb deal or an Airbnb dud. And that is exactly what this calculator is going to do for you. It's going to show you how to be able to use, different tools like AirDNAs and things like that will help you to be able to understand what's the income. And then you match up the expenses and boom, pops out right there for you. What are you going to make on a monthly basis, a yearly basis? Is it a risky deal? Is it not that risky? It's going to show you all those things. So really great tool. Would really encourage you to use that. And of course, as always, join our over 40,000 member Airbnb mastermind Facebook group. That thing is crazy big now. And lots and lots of value on there too. So with that being said, like I mentioned, I've got a lot of other things going on besides Airbnb. So just to catch you up on my business, and then we'll get into talking about what should you be doing for the remainder of 2021. I'm recording this on the beginning of August here of 2021, and there's a lot of talk of and threat of another shutdown. So what should you be doing? We'll be talking about that here. So, I've got a pretty intense business when it comes to short-term rentals, and the majority of my attention is going into that, and then also bringing you guys value. I would say even more time is just creating content and getting on here, and even with the Facebook group that's gotten so big, I'm putting a lot of time into that as well. But with us right now, we've got now with 8 units that we're setting up in the Fresno and Clovis area. We are going to bust through the 40 unit mark in Fresno. We've got 3 going on in Bass Lake, and then we have 7 in Phoenix, Arizona. And I am looking to add as many properties right now that I do not own as possible on Airbnb. And I'll tell you why, because I've gotten to the point where I think that if you can mitigate risk without sacrificing what you're making. And what I'm talking about is your return on your investment, not necessarily your cash flow, but return on investment. So if I can mitigate the risk while still holding on to double, triple, even quadruple returns on my investments, then I'm going to go for those things all day long. So when I go and I get another arbitrage unit like Gracie and I did recently, we got one here in Fresno. We're going to be all in right around $15,000, and we're going to make right around $2,000 per month. So what does that look like in terms of return on investment? Well, $2,000 per month is $24,000, and we invested $15,000. So we have made almost double, which is almost 200% of an ROI in year one. I'm going to take those all day long, especially when I don't own them. And then if I am going to own them, I'm going to make sure that I'm burning them so that I have no money in the deal. I know a lot of you saw probably our Burr from Airbnb, or what was it? Burr BNB from hell. Even though that was a hellish deal of 6-figure rehab and delayed contractors, crappy contractors, the whole 9 yards. We still, at the end of the day, refinanced and got all of our money back, have no money in the deal. And now we're making, between 4 partners, each of us are making over $500, $600, $700 per month, plus getting equity in a property. So these are the types of deals that I'm looking for right now. Another one that we have going on is not an Airbnb deal, and that's what I want to talk about. We're doing my first new construction. Really excited about that one. That's here in Fresno. That is actually from a deal that I got where I flipped it in 2020. Yeah, that was October 2020. And the owner owned the back lot that was adjacent to that property. And they basically said, hey, we're going to eventually be ready to sell this, just not quite ready yet. I said, yeah, you just make me your first phone call. They made me the first phone call, and now we are in contract. It's been a long process of getting the city or the architect and all the permits going, but we're finally about to start building on that one. That's really exciting for me. It's not as exciting of a deal as when we got it because of the price of lumber being crazy, but we're still going to make really great money, it seems. And especially if the market continues to do what it's doing, we're going to be just fine. The great thing about it is if the market does do something that is not favorable for us to sell it, then it has a few other options. We can refinance it, or we can keep a private money lender on the deal and use it as likely as short-term rental, because it's in a decent short-term rental area. It's not my favorite, but it definitely would work. And so there's a lot of options there. And that's the thing that I want to make sure that you guys know is whenever I'm making a deal, I'm always thinking, does this have multiple exit strategies? For example, that deal that we were doing in Arizona that turned into a little bit of a nightmare. Well, we knew going into it that if Arizona for some reason ends up having regulations on short-term rentals, this thing would still more than cover the mortgage for a long-term rental. So that's another one. And then we know that, hey, if we hold on to it long enough as a rental, then eventually we're going to get paid on the back end with the sale or a 1031 with the equity. And so I see 2 or 3 exit strategies on one property, and that's something that I'm going to go for. I've slowed down a little bit on flips, mainly just because I'm putting way more time into my short-term rentals business. But every once in a while, a deal is going to come my way. I'm going to do a flip on it, but I'm also getting a little bit more hesitant on flips just because of the fact that it seems that there's way more competition now than ever. And you have to be really, really deep in the trenches. And that's, I talk about all the time, having a laser focus on just really what you're really good at. And I'm really good at relationships. I'm really good at Airbnb and short-term rentals. I'm not so good at cold calling. I'm not so good at direct mail. And I could take some time to learn that, but it would be redirecting my attention from something that is growing like gangbusters right now. I mean, my Airbnb and short-term rentals business this time last year, October or August of 2020, was making us right around $10,000 to $15,000 per month. This last month, we netted nearly $50,000. So if I keep on 5Xing my business, I mean, think about that. What if I 5X that in a year from now? Holy cow. Probably not going to do that, but it's at least something that you can see like, hey, my time and attention going into this is yielding a lot more than going and trying to learn a new thing. So that's where I'm at. That's where my business is at. Wanted to give you that quick snapshot so that you guys can kind of see where my mindset is always at on these things. But with that being said, let's also get into the whole reason why you wanted to listen to this episode. And that is because you want to know, hey, there's this thing called the Delta variant and the Delta Plus and all this stuff that's being thrown out there. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. I'm recording this on Tuesday, and even over the last couple of days, it's kind of felt like, maybe we're not going to have a shutdown. But what if we do have another shutdown? What would we do? What should you do? And I'm not going to get political on this. I'm not going to get into anything of like, this is what should be done. I'm just going to strictly talk about what we have in our control today. What we have in our control is our effort towards a certain exit strategy that you're going to be talking about today, which is, again, short-term rentals. So if you are right now, let's just say you have 0 to 5 short-term rentals, you're in this position where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really excited about making money, or I'm starting to make some money, but now, like, what if it shuts down? And I don't really have a ton of experience. I haven't seen, I haven't been through the 2020 COVID. I've only been through 2021 or the end of 2020. And I haven't really seen that like March through June of 2020 in my business. And what if that happens again? Well, I'll just give you a real simple answer. The people who doubled down on short-term rentals between, let's call it April, because we didn't know what was going on in March, but from April till about July of 2020, the people doubled down on short-term rentals and said, I am not going to let this slow me down. I'm going to pay attention to history and know that we have gone through pandemics before and we come out on the other side stronger and we understand and learn from diseases. I'm going to just assume that I'm going to be one of the only ones that's actually building that business right now. Those people that had that mindset in April of 2020 are now winning today in Airbnb. I can name myself as one of them. I can name one of my students as one of them that actually took that mindset and said, I'm not going to let this slow me down. They had 1 unit at the time back then. They now have 7 today. So 7xing their business in under a year. It's pretty awesome. And to me, those are the reason. Now let's hindsight's 2020, right? So we can look at it now and say, well, yeah, but you really didn't know what was going on. No, I didn't know what was going on, but it goes back to risk, right? It goes back to mitigating our risk. And so if you are really in this arbitrage or co-hosting model, for those of you that are new, arbitrage, you rent and then you sublet it through Airbnb or a short-term rental website with the permission of the landlord. That's very important. Or if you're co-hosting, which is essentially like a property manager, I call it hospitality management just to keep things kosher. But basically you are taking a property that someone is going to put all financial risk in. They're going to furnish it. They're going to pay for all of the services, and they're going to pay you a percentage of whatever you create by making it a passive investment for them. You're going to do all of the messaging on Airbnb. You're going to do the turnovers. You're going to literally create a company of teammates that are going to make it a great investment for the owner and a great investment for you too, because you're going to make a lot of money on a property that you have no money in. So with that, that's what I doubled down on. I said, okay, arbitrage. Yeah, it's good. It's really good actually. But I have a lot of people right now that are looking at me and saying, Kyle, how's Airbnb going? It's March 2020. COVID just hit. What's going on? Well, I'm going to press the pause button for a second because I don't know what's going on. I'm going to take a few of my places off Airbnb. I'm going to keep a few places on. I'm going to see how it goes for a month. I saw that Airbnb was still strong. Okay, now I'm doubling down. I'm going for it. Let's go all in. And I started telling all these owners, hey, Airbnb is working. It's still getting 90% occupancy. We were at 95% before. Now we're at 90. Not a big drop off. We were at $100 a night. Now we're at $90 a night. Not a big drop off. And all these owners saw this and said, if this can survive a pandemic, it can survive anything. And they all went all in with me. And so I guess what I'm sharing with you is that this is the time. If we have, maybe it's not now, maybe it's in 3 months, maybe it's in 6 months. If we do have another pandemic or another shutdown, there's going to be tons of people and media and all the people who are not educated about this. They're going to be saying, don't get into this industry. Travel's shutting down. And for that reason, there is no good time, or there's no good thing about this for the short-term rentals industry. And what they're referring to is actually true, but in only certain areas. It is true for places like Hawaii, okay? An island, a place where it's really difficult to get to unless you have either a plane or a boat. And so for that reason, yeah, it's going to get affected in a place like Hawaii. Hawaii was one of the worst that were affected by this. And then we saw in those highly vacation areas, like let's call it Florida, and probably like Nashville and things like that here in New York, places like that in the US. Yeah, it slowed down for 2, 3, 4, 5 months for sure. But guess what? It's back again. And so we have to have this long vision, not the short vision. So when we have a long vision, we say, hey, listen, I'm going to take a risk that no one else is willing to take right now. If I go get an arbitrage unit, I realize that I'm going to have to maybe eat that rent for 3 or 4 months. But if I get 3 or 4 of those when no one was looking for them, I'm solving a problem for a landlord who was not having any luck in getting their place rented out because there's a shutdown. I solved that problem for them. And here I am on the other end. Yeah, it sucked to, eat rent for 3 or 4 months. Or maybe you take it on as a co-host deal and you're having to justify, hey, we're going to make money for you, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, on the other end of this. Just be patient. It's going to suck for 3 or 4 months. But then on the other side, this thing just blows up. And that's exactly what happens. So with all that being said, I want to just encourage you to be one of the few. Warren Buffett says it all the time. If everyone's doing it, that's the time to be skeptical. But if no one's doing it, that's the time to go all in. And so right now, everyone is looking to start an Airbnb business. In the last 6 months, it's never been more popular. So yeah, now's the time to look at it and say like, hey, is this going to be right for my area? Is it going to get saturated? Is it going to get regulated? Is it going to be one of those things that is only around for the short term, not the long term? Those are the things that you start thinking of. However, now everyone's saying, and I can see it all over my Facebook page. People are saying, "Oh, Delta variant, it's high. We're going to have another shutdown, and I'm going to just press the pause button." That's now showing you, hey, now is the time to look at it. Still be skeptical, still do the research. But if you are convinced that, hey, this is still going to work in the long run, this is going to work, now's the time to double down and go all in. So, and that's where you'll be winning on the other side. Now, just equating this to other things, maybe it's not Airbnb. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it is a different exit strategy. Maybe it's Bitcoin. Maybe it is flipping houses. Maybe it is creative financing. Maybe it's the stock market. Still, I would take the same approach with anything. What can I do right now that is going to be low risk with still decent reward, and is going to be something that everyone is maybe skeptical or scared of, so that I can be one of the only ones? I'll give you a really good example. My friends, Cletus and Aaron Shelton, they flip houses here in Fresno. They're one of the only ones that are doing houses that are 2, 3, 4, even 5 times the median price of a house in Fresno. Now, all of these investors are looking at them 2 years ago saying, "You're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. This is way too risky, because there's going to be a market, there's going to be a bubble that hits, there's going to be a crash, or hey, as soon as COVID hit, oh yeah, the top of the market is going to be the one that's affected the most." And they were the ones that said, no, we see that this is not going to be the case for the long term. Maybe for the short term, something will happen, but for the long term, we see this as being something that will continue to flourish. And that's what they kept on doing. And now today, they're having their biggest year ever in flipping houses. Think about that. In 2021, when the market is so high and everyone is trying to sell their house at the highest price possible, and all of these people and investors are having tough times finding good deals off market, they are thriving more than ever in year, I believe, 5 of their business. And why? It's because they saw an opportunity to be one of the only ones that was focusing in on a certain type of property that was going to have very little or no competition from investors. So my suggestion to you is, maybe there's a market, maybe there's a type of property, maybe there is a type of landlord, maybe there is a type of clientele, a type of guest. What can you be to these people during uncertain times that can be both valuable to you and them, and make yourself different from the competition? If you can really focus in on that and say, how am I going to be different than the competition? That right now is how, to me, you still win in the short term and the long term. So that's about it for me. I just wanted to share that. So the whole scheme of this is double down. If other people are uncertain, double down, and you'll find yourself winning on the other side. But there's a rule and an exception, right? Again, we're talking about the majority of places. I'm not telling you to go do this in Hawaii. I'm not telling you to go do this in Europe right now. I'm telling you, in regards to the majority of places in the US that are not regulated, that is how this will work. But anyway, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope this gave you a little bit more encouragement to go out and to conquer the world of Airbnb. If you want to be a part of this movement, and you want to be a part of just educating yourself, investing in yourself, there's tons of resources on fearlesskyle.com, including my free Airbnb profit calculator, 2 of my courses. You can go check all of that out on our website. And if you have any other questions, always go to fearlesskyle.com/consultation, book a call with me. I'm happy to answer any of your questions and help you get a roadmap to getting started in the Airbnb world. So that's going to be it for now. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.